Hello, everyone. This PowerPoint presentation is about critical thinking. You will be using certain types of critical thinking methods during the course. And so this is the best time to be introducing that to you. Critical thinking is skillful, responsible thinking that is conducive to good judgment because it is sensitive to context. It relies on criteria and it is self-correcting. We all have critical thinking skills and we all can refine those skills. And that is one of the primary purposes of this course. Critical thinking has a purpose. It's an attempt to figure something out, to explore an issue or a question. Sometimes it's used to solve a problem. It is not necessarily based on opinion, but instead on assumptions that are supported by evidence. It begins with a point of view. It's based on data, information, and evidence. It is expressed through and shaped by concepts and ideas. It contains inferences or interpretations by which we draw conclusions and give some sort of meaning to data. And most importantly, it leads somewhere or it has larger implications and consequences. During this course, you're going to be sharpening your critical thinking skills in your discussion group questions each week. Not for all, but for many of these questions, we ask you to use a method that's called See It. And this technique is going to help you to clarify your ideas. It's an acronym that stands for the steps that you see here: state, elaborate, exemplify, infer, think deeper. Okay, so now let's explain those a little bit more. When you're stating something, you are clearly articulating your main point or your position. Then if you elaborate on it, you can expand on your main point. You could start this section with, in other words. Exemplify means that you're providing an example of your point. Inferring means that you're stating a conclusion by reasoning from the evidence. And thinking deeper deals with asking a question that prompts others to consider this issue in a deeper way. You can use this method to formulate questions that are critical questions. You can use it to formulate short answers. It's a really great way to start to expand and develop a good system for adding more depth to the arguments that you're making. So here's an example, and I've set this up asking the question, what is gender? A little further along in the course, we're going to be dealing with gender and its relationship to design. So first, let's state it. So gender refers to the economic, social, and cultural attributes and opportunities associated with a spectrum that has traditionally established male and female as primary roles. However, the concept of gender has expanded beyond these two identifiers. Now we're going to elaborate on that statement. Sometimes a person's genetically assigned sex does not line up with their gender identity. These individuals might refer to themselves as transgender, non-binary, or gender non-conforming, and are part of an expanding gender spectrum. Now we're going to give an example. For example, according to a 2020 Ipsos survey, more Americans agreed than disagreed that there is a spectrum of gender identities rather than just the binary male or female. These results are dramatically different than similar surveys given in 2000, in which most Americans defined gender in binary terms. Now notice here that I've added a reference because I was talking about the Ipsos survey and I wanted to make sure that I put a reference in there for that. Now let's move into the infer. So this is where we're developing some conclusions based on what we just talked about. Attitudes about gender, whether in the family, workplace, or public sphere, also reflect cultural understandings of the talents, characteristics, and behaviors of various genders. As a result, gender identity plays a significant role in the ways our identities and lives are shaped. Changing attitudes about gender indicate changing societal attitudes. So you can see in this inference section, I'm talking about the implications as well as some sort of concluding remarks about this whole concept, what is gender? So it's not just the state elaborate and exemplify, but it's also concluding that and implying more. And then finally, think deeper. So when I was developing this response, I started thinking about how our government might be involved in gender issues, and it is. So that led me to ask the question, how is the US government involved in gender issues, and how do these involvements affect our culture? So the issue here is that I want to ask a question that might get my audience to start thinking about what gender is and some of the issues that are associated with gender. And so I'm asking a very specific question here about how our government starts to get involved in this one way or another, and how does that change or affect the way we think about gender. So that's it. And now let's take a look at you and what you might do. So I've set up a couple of questions here. And the question that I've asked you to think about, and then maybe you can expand on this and practice a little bit, is how does television programming affect our perceptions of gender? Certainly we know that the design of media affects our perceptions much more than we even realize. And so, and certainly when we're watching series or we're watching television programs, there definitely are gender messages that are being sent all the time. So how would you do that? How would you respond to this? How does television programming affect our perceptions of gender? Here's another one. How do children's toys affect our perceptions of gender? In this case, does the function of the little two-wheeler with training wheels change at all? No, but we clearly can see in this very binary example that we have one bike that's marketed towards girls and one bike that's marketed towards boys. How would you respond to this question? These are similar questions. You'll be getting questions like this throughout the semester in your critical thinking discussion groups. And so oftentimes we will ask you to use the See It method to structure your response. Okay, now here's another example. This is a tool that will help you to ensure critical thinking when developing written documents or verbal presentations. I must confess that I use this when I'm developing articles for publications. And I don't always set it up in this order that I have right here, but I typically at least respond to all of these questions And then I take all of that material and put it together. And typically, I've got a pretty good argument by the time I'm finished. So I keep this with me. I actually keep it on my desktop so that when I'm writing, I can look at it and use it to get myself moving. I think you could do the same thing when you're writing term papers for other classes or if you're giving verbal presentations. So keep this slide handy. You might want to just download this one slide and put it on your desktop as well. Okay, so a few concluding remarks here. A critical thinker, that's you, raises vital questions and problems, and you formulate them clearly and precisely. You gather and assess relevant information, and you use abstract ideas to effectively interpret that information. You come to well-reasoned conclusions and solutions, testing them against relevant criteria and standards. You think open-mindedly within alternative systems of thought, recognizing and assessing as need be their assumptions, implications, and practical consequences. This is a really important part of this course. Developing the ability to think from multiple points of view, developing the ability to put yourself in the shoes of another person and to try to see the world from their point of view. If we can accomplish that, we have met one of the big goals for the course. And then finally, a critical thinker communicates effectively with others in figuring out solutions to complex problems. So this is a little short but sweet introduction to critical thinking. I hope it helps you during the course of this semester. And as always, if you have any questions, please contact me or put your questions in the general discussion. Thanks very much.